Join us today for an action-packed episode of Locked On Fantasy Baseball, where we review the 2023 season for the Pittsburgh Pirates.
You are Locked On Fantasy Baseball, your daily fantasy baseball podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, fantasy baseball fanatics, and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Baseball podcast, brought to you by the Locked On Sports Network, your team every day. As always, we're your number one source of fantasy baseball knowledge, and thank you for making us your first listen each and every day. I'm your host, Dominic Martino. You can find me on Twitter at DomMartinoFB. Here, as always, with my brother, my co-host, my partner in crime, Matthew Ane, and you can find him on Twitter at Matthew_Ane. If you're listening on a platform like Apple or Spotify that allows 5-star ratings or reviews, we would truly appreciate it if you do that for us. And guess what? If you do decide to do that for us, take a screenshot of it, send it to fantasymds@gmail.com, or even DM it to us on Twitter or Instagram, whatever's easiest for you, and you will get a chance to join our coveted listener league for next season. And also, lastly, if you're watching on YouTube and you haven't already, hit that little bell below. It subscribes to the channel, also gives you notification every time we drop a new episode. All right, guys, real quick, let me talk to you about one of today's sponsors. It's FanDuel. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started today. And all right, guys, as we mentioned up at the top, we're talking about those Pittsburgh Pirates today. Honestly, kind of one of the more interesting teams, to put it nicely. They really didn't have a great season last year. They finished at a 76-86 record. That's good enough for the fourth in the NL Central, and they were better than those Cardinals. So that's saying a little bit about them. But Matt, let's start things off hot with somebody that I think everybody really wants to hear about. And it's Oneil Cruz.
Yeah, and I also want to talk about their season too. They had a not lackluster. They had a hot start, and then and left you desiring after May to continue that great little streak. I have family up in Pittsburgh losing their mind over. They were like, "Oh my God, they're gonna win the World Series!" And then I talked to them in June, and they're like, "I don't even want to talk to you." So it was pretty interesting, funny to hear the emotional roller coaster that is being a Pirates fan. So let's kick it off with being an emotional owner this year, and that's Oneil Cruz. We're all really mad at you, Oneil Cruz. Let me put this out there in the universe. We're very mad at you. Learn to slide. Learn to, not break your leg. Actually, here's the thing. I've never heard of somebody breaking their leg like the way you did sliding. Like, it's almost a football injury, my guy. It was fugly, and I'm really disappointed. Now, let's talk about fantasy. I had to get that out there. I had to get it off my chest. But here we go. In his, 9-game appearance, his 9 games this year, he had 32 at-bats. He had 7 runs. He had a double, a bomb, 4 ribs, 3 stolen bases, 7 walks to 8 strikeouts, batting about 250. Like, quite honestly, everything out the gate was everything you expected from Oneil Cruz. Quite honestly, like, you look at this, you're like, wow, this kid was about to have a season. This kid could have been in the running for MVP. Probably wouldn't have won it, but could have been a name we were talking about, especially the way that season started. Imagine that season with Oneil Cruz in that lineup. I think you wouldn't have been desiring in June. I think you would have been still celebrating. Now, you probably wouldn't have finished last in that division, but you probably wouldn't have made the wild card. But that's another animal in its own. Oneil Cruz is a difference maker for not only your fantasy teams, but the Pittsburgh Pirates themselves. So Oneil Cruz, ultimately for next year, I think is still going to be very highly ranked in my rankings. He almost made it back this year. He's going to start the season off like normal, like any other player. So there's nothing holding him back. There's no reason not to draft him at a stellar position, and pretty much pay what you would normally pay. I have Oneil Cruz at 7 right now, but that is all tentative. This is October 16th when we're recording, right? So, I mean, I quite honestly, I'm going to tell you right now, O'Neal Cruz starts looking anywhere as nasty as he did in last spring training. You're going to see him scooch up, to 5 or 4, depending on how frisky I feel like getting, because O'Neal Cruz has the exact upside as what Ronald Acuna did right now. Maybe not the 70 stolen bases, but that 40-40 upside. I don't think anybody's even getting relatively close to that again. But the 40-40 upside is there with O'Neal Cruz. And honestly, it might be 50-40 because O'Neal Cruz is not only a big, big boy, but he's got the power to back that up. So O'Neal Cruz, oh, he's going to be so much fun. Hopefully just, learns how to slide next year.
So Matt, real quick, I think the big question for next year and like one of the biggest debates for next season is going to be O'Neal Cruz or Ellie De La Cruz, who might as well be cousins. I don't think they're related with the Cruz last name, but they might as well be with the size and the weight and the speed and the power. Do you have O'Neal Cruz over Ellie? Go as of right now in your rankings.
No.
Okay. Fair enough.
Well,
I have them super close as well.
I have Ellie 5. And I have O'Neal Cruz at 7.
I also have one spacer between them. I have Ellie at 7 in my shortstop rankings going into next year, and I have O'Neal Cruz at 9. But I think you hit the nail on the head, though. O'Neal Cruz's upside is best player in baseball upside. And, as you mentioned, if it wasn't for that, I believe it was a fractured ankle. He could have had a monster season this year, and we'd all be talking about him as potentially, a first, second round pick if everything went right for O'Neal Cruz, especially if that Pirates team would have, kept up at being as good as they were at the beginning of the season. O'Neal Cruz could have been that catalyst. But well said, man. I don't think I have a lot to add. I think, everyone pretty much knows the upside. And if you don't, Matt did a good job breaking it down for you. The batting average upside is kind of there too. He's always showed solid batting average in the minors, except for 2017 as an 18-year-old, but then bounced back with a 286 batting average in 2018, a 298 batting average 2019, a 310 batting average in the minors in 2021. So the upside is really there. I mean, he's only going to be 25 next year. I honestly, as Matt said, wouldn't be surprised if he's jumping up people's rankings, including our own, come to spring training next year. But that's really about it on O'Neal Cruz. Kid is going to be great, going to be phenomenal. Just hopefully he doesn't follow suit of the Byron Buxton, Adalberto Mondesi type. But let's keep things moving here. Let's talk about somebody who actually had a pretty good second half. Let's talk about Ke'Bryan Hayes, another young player that, had a lot of hype around him when he first came up back in 2020. He had an awesome showing through 24 games in 2020. He hit 376 with 5 homers, a steal, 7 doubles, and the hype was there. And then he really, didn't have a healthy 2021. He only played 96 games. 2022, coming off the injury, okay, trying to feel things out. But then, this year in 2023, as a 26-year-old, Ke'Bryan Hayes played 124 games, 494 at-bats, 65 runs, 31 doubles in 124 games is fantastic. 7 triples, 15 homers, 61 RBIs, 10 steals, and he hit 271 over that period. I really like what he showed. I think he's, got some potential for next year. I do probably have him pretty low as my 21st third baseman for next year. But honestly, I really want to see Cruz and Hayes and a lot of these other guys we're going to talk about today, a lot of other young guys on this team, and see how far they can take this Pirates team and what they can do with it. But before Matt gives his take here on Ke'Bryan Hayes, we get into the rest of these guys. We have a quick sponsor for you.
October baseball is back, and you can make the postseason debut with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Join FanDuel today, and you'll get started with a $200 bet and bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to create a new account. Then you can get in the action from first pitch until final out. Bet on everything from strikeouts to home runs to who will win the game. And if you can't wait to get the whole game to get the W, predict what's going to happen at the next at bat with quick bets. So head on over to FanDuel.com/lockedon right now. Step up to the plate this postseason with a $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the MLB. All right. And everydayers, new listeners, I want to throw it out there. We haven't talked about it in a little bit. We have our subtext, the Diamond Club, where you know what, you're going to have a full access suite to all our pre-season draft tools at your exposure. We're going to, have direct access to us for all those, burning fantasy questions and everything under the sun that you could possibly want.
Yeah,
Right?
dynasty keeper questions, throw them out, bring them to us.
Yep. And I promise we'll actually have a list of everything we're going to offer very soon. We're still working out the finer details, but you want to hop in now? We're going to probably start releasing that real soon. And you know what? Don't hesitate to wait. Prep starts now so you can win those leagues, be ahead of the competition. And that's on the Diamond Club today. But all right, let me talk about Ke'Bryan Hayes here. Honestly, he's an interesting one. Fantasy relevancy, I really don't see too much as a real baseball player.
Damn.
Yeah, I'm really just not a guy. I was a couple years ago, but honestly,
I still think there's something left, man. I think we're selling him a little short. I think we're selling him just a little short.
Dude, you know what? My biggest thing with him was I thought there was another level, and there isn't. I think he is who he is, right? He's going to be decent batting average, well, above average batting average. He's going to get on base. He's going to get driven in by Brian Reynolds and O'Neill Cruz and Henry Davis when he finally steps up. And then essentially, not really going to have too many RBIs. And I really thought the stolen bases would have been there a little bit more, and he'd probably be more of a specialist in that aspect. And he didn't. So, I look at it and I go, okay, Ke'Bryan Hayes, really good baseball player. And when he's streaky, he's really good off the waivers. But am I going to draft him? Absolutely not. I don't even think he's on my draft board. I think I have him at like 30 for third baseman.
Right.
You know,
I hear you. I mean, as I said, I got him at 21 at third base, so it's not like I love him. But honestly, if next year, if Ke'Bryan goes 2020 with like a 280 batting average, I'm not going to be shocked. And if that team is good and the runs are good for him, 90 runs with 2020 and a 280 batting average,
I don't know.
A little sexy, sneaky pick,
I got him at 26. I lied, but
no, we're not far off.
He's probably still going to fall. But anyway, a fantasy asset, I just don't see it. He's going to be
corner
really
infield if you're playing a deep league.
If you're playing it, and if he NFBC, fantastic draft pick. Corner infield leagues, fantastic draft pick. But I still like a standard league where you have 3 to 5 outfielders. You have just your standard, base infield essentially, and a flex or two. You're not drafting Ke'Bryan Hayes. He's not even on your radar, and that's really just where I'm at with Ke'Bryan Hayes. Really good for real baseball, really good for deep leagues, and deep in positional leagues. But other than that, Ke'Bryan Hayes, not somebody I'm going out there and targeting.
Fair enough. I like the little debate, I like the little back and forth.
Oh yeah. All right. Let's talk about Brian Reynolds. Brian Reynolds, somebody who started off bad out of hell here
in baseball for the first 2 weeks.
Right. Honestly, first month, he was fantastic. And honestly, even a little bit further, he was really killing it. Reynolds really made a mark. I honestly thought he was going to get moved too, but he actually got extended instead. So he's there to stay, which is cool. Good for the Pirates organization. His fantasy relevance, honestly, I think he is Mr. Relevant. He's all reliable. This is just what he does. I always just questioned what his ceiling could be, but I guess I really just should have pondered at what his floor is. I feel like what he did this year is definitely repeatable. 574 at bats, 85 runs, 31 doubles, 5 triples, 24 bombs, 84 ribs, 12 stolen bases, and batted about 263. Now, I would love to see him get back to the batting average that we saw in 2021, and that would make him incredibly valuable. But even if he got to 275, which is where I think he hangs, he's going to be very great. I think the runs and ribbies probably even come up, honestly, with a healthy O'Neill Cruz, with a year 2 Henry Davis. So, I think the opportunity for Reynolds to really be a serious contributor for your fantasy lineups is something that is, very relevant. Somebody that's definitely in the forefront of my mind that I don't want to, forget or, overlook like I did last year. I didn't bury Reynolds. I had him as a top 35 outfielder, but I felt like I should have had him higher based off of how things played off, which hindsight's 2020. But with Brian Reynolds, I feel like, you know what? I'm not the only one that kind of did not that always questioned what he could be because of that Pittsburgh lineup. But I think that, you know, 2 years of really good stats and seeing progression at only age 28, I think Reynolds has a nice future ahead of him, especially with the additions to the team.
Matt, where do you have him ranked at outfield? I have him at 32 at the moment. I think that's a safe spot for him. So if you're talking about, your average 10, 12-man league, he probably winds up as a mediocre outfielder number 2, a high-end outfielder number 3, in my opinion.
29.
So we're in the same range. He's kind of just, you kind of just know what you're getting from Reynolds at this point in his career. You're getting around 25 homers. The counting stats really depends on how good that Pittsburgh team can be, as we've talked about. The 12 steals was nice this year with the new rules, so maybe he's, a 10, I'd say like an 8 to 15 steal guy in that range. And the batting average is going to be solid. So it's a safe pick. It's kind of like if you took a lot of risks in your outfield before you get to this point, or you just took a lot of risk in your bats before you get to this point, you grab Brian Reynolds, you got some security there, and you kind of know how things are going to work out. But Matt, strong take on him. I think we're just going to keep things moving. Let's move on to some of these. Oh, you chime in? Be my guest.
One last thing on him.
Of course.
I honestly feel some of those doubles can turn into home runs. There's 30 upside with him too. So the floor is what I essentially talked about. The ceiling could be with a healthy lineup and everybody kind of firing on all cylinders here. I mean, he could have a 30 home run season with a 270 batting average with, 95 in the runs and ribbies category. And then we're talking about this dude at a top 25.
That's
so
not out of the question.
So like Brian Reynolds has a nice ceiling, but a really solid floor. But yeah, let's move on. Go ahead.
Very, very well said, bro. That's why I don't really have too much to add. You kind of nailed that one. Let's move on to Henry Davis. Young stud. He was the number 1 pick in 2021 out of everybody. Number 1 overall pick for the Pirates. Kid's got a good bat, and he started off pretty decent. I think his first 10 games were pretty strong, and then he started to really slow down. So the numbers really don't, show the promise that Henry Davis has. 62 games for Henry Davis this past season, 27 runs, 10 doubles, 7 homers, 24 RBIs, 3 steals. The walk to strikeout ratio wasn't fantastic with 25 walks to 69 strikeouts, and he hit 213. Now, the biggest disappointment is that he played no catcher at all this year. He's officially going to be outfield only in every format next year, which is going to be tough for the young Henry Davis, and just owning him as an outfielder only isn't going to be easy, because I don't know how he's going to pan out. He's only going to be 24 next year. Let's talk about his very limited minor league experience. 55 games in the minors this past season, 196 at-bats, 32 runs, 10 doubles, 2 triples, 12 homers, 32 RBIs, 10 steals, and a 306 batting average. I think Henry Davis is going to be more of a wait-and-see type of guy. I don't even know where I have him at outfield. I probably have him somewhat buried right now. He's not a guy I'm going to go out of my way to take unless he's really mashing in spring training. I don't see him here on my list, but if I had to guess, I would throw him somewhere in the 60s. I think he's just a name that I might have overlooked as I was doing my rankings here. Actually, I have him at 74. I found him. I have him at 74. So I'm not super excited about Henry Davis at the moment. Kid's got a lot of upside. He's got decent power, good speed, good batting average potential, but I got to see it come together first, because I was a little disappointed in him that he didn't make the adjustment back.
Yeah, I actually have him at 59. So at outfield, yeah, I mean, I start looking at names, and there's names I'd much rather take a shot on at that point, right? Like James Outman or Henry Davis at outfield. I'm going James Outman.
Yeah, I like Outman. I have Outman higher.
Chas McCormick or Henry Davis.
Chas.
Right. And then said Brent Rooker.
Rooker actually have fairly high at 56.
Right. And then Taylor Ward is where you
love Taylor Ward. That's one of my, I think when we did the Angels episode, we both kind of just talked about if this guy stays on the field, he's going to be fantastic.
Right. So that's kind of where I have him. And those are the guys that are directly in front of him. But before we move on, and we can either continue this take or move on, Dom has somebody to talk about.
Today's episode is sponsored by the clothing company Bird Dogs. Looking for clothes that redefine comfort and style? Look no further than Bird Dogs. Bird Dogs makes you look good in Bird Dogs stretch khaki shorts that are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. They fit way better than regular shorts that are made of stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fixed this issue by inventing cloud knit fabric that looks just like khaki but stretches, so you get a way slimmer fit without having to sacrifice any movement. Bird Dog uses anti-stink, sweat-wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long. Bird Dog shorts do the exact same thing Lululemon do, but fit way better. Bird Dogs keeps, hooking Matt and I up with just amazing gear. I know they send me some pants. I think there's, hoodies that are on the way, a whole new line of stuff they're coming out with. So keep on the lookout for that with Bird Dogs as it gets colder. You're going to need some, gear. You definitely need to check out Bird Dogs. So if you want to be like Matt and I, you go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB. And when you enter the promo code LockedOnMLB, you get a free Bird Dogs water bottle with your order. Once again, that's birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB for a free water bottle at checkout. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you that. All right, Matt. So why don't we got a couple of more names that we should really try and get to. I know we wanted to rant about some of the guys at the top. Gave a pretty informative take on Henry Davis. Do you have this next guy lined up ready? You want me to take him?
I got it. I actually
Go for it, brother.
I actually am liking him. Andy Rodriguez, somebody that is probably going to be moving up sneakily through my rankings as we get closer to draft day. Is I like the upside of what this kid offers, right? I mean, he didn't have a lot. He played 57 games this year, and he had 186 at bats, and in that time he had 27 runs. He had 7 doubles, 2 triples, 3 bombs, 13 ribs, 17 walks, to 49 strikeouts, batted 220. It wasn't pretty, but at the same time, there's some highlight things that you can kind of take a look at, I guess, right? The doubles, the triples, and the fact that he was able to get the go for yard for 3 really kind of gives me an insight of what this kid is possibly able to do if he does adjust to the big league hitting. Not going to have to pay too much in a redraft league for this kid. You're not going to have to really figure out, where you're willing to take the risk on him, at least right now. Things can change from here and now. I mean, this is, again, October 16th. We start talking about him in January, February, and we could see exactly where he's going to go in drafts. But I think Andy Rodriguez has a lot of upside in 2022 in the minors, a trip between AA, AAA, and single A. 458 at bats, 92 runs, 39 doubles, 4 triples, 25 bombs, 95 ribbies, 60 walks to 101 strikeouts. That's over 50% from walk to strikeout ratio, and batted 323. If Andy decides to even do 3/4 of that batting average, where he hits about 275 and has that walk to strikeout ratio with all those doubles and triples on top of the home run upside, points leagues, this kid is going to be a super sleeper. And Roto, he's going to be fantastic across the board if he does live up to the hype. Now, obviously ADP isn't out. Obviously, we don't know what the rest of the industry is feeling about Endy at this moment, but right now Endy, I feel, is going to be somebody that we're going to be talking about in our early sleepers or early breakout is probably more of the category for Andy Rodriguez.
Yeah, I like Andy. I think another guy. I think you're spot on, Matt. You low key Pirates fan because your takes are pretty spot on here, and he's got a lot of upside. I have Andy ranked at 25 at catcher, which is fairly low. But the upside's there if you do want to take the chance. Let's say you waited on catcher. Let's say it's a 2-catcher league. Andy is definitely somebody you can target. A lot of pop in that bat for a guy at 6 foot, 200 pounds. And not really much else to air. Batting average upside is there. He's always hit for a good batting average in the minors. Guy only played 57 games. I know he started off very shaky, got a little bit better somewhere in the middle, finished okay. Let's just kind of see where the road takes him. As Matt said, as more ADP comes out, spring training, we could really dive deeper here on Andy Rodriguez. But let's fit some of these pitchers in here. Let's talk about Mitch Keller. Mitch Keller started off like a tank, big 6'3", 220 righty, got all his everything together, and he looked really, really good to start the year. Finished very mediocrely. He really struggled down the stretch. Mitch Keller, age 27 season, 13 wins, 9 losses, 4.21 ERA across 32 starts, 194 innings, 210 strikeouts with a 1.24 whip. This is most innings that Mitch Keller's thrown by about, almost 40 innings. So maybe he tired down the stretch there. I know there was that one brilliant start. I think it was against the Nationals where he went 8 innings, had a bunch of Ks. I think he gave 1 earned run. He just looked fantastic. Next game, he went out and got blown up and just really struggled to the finish line, really limped to the finish line. I know it hurt some people down the end in the fantasy baseball championships and stuff, but he's a guy at next year, maybe with another year, more innings thrown. He's got good stuff. He really has been working on his stuff the last few years. He's going to be 28. Let's see, where do I have Mitch Keller at starting pitching for next year? Once again, probably too low. I have Mitch Keller at 55, which is decent. You get him as your SP5 in that range. I'm not hating it. But I need a deep dive on Keller. I need to see what he's doing this offseason. I need to see if I really think he's worth that. But you know what? He showed a lot of upside this year. So I am a fan of Mitch Keller. Kind of been waiting for him to have a season similar to this one for a long time now.
Yeah, you know me. I've been calling for Mitch Keller for years. I love Mitch Keller. And it's funny. You look at what he did this year versus his previous years. Obviously the end of season numbers aren't as impressive outside of the strikeout number at 210 for 194 94 innings pitched, because the ERA was a 4.21. But the funny thing is, though, his FIP was a 3.8 to his 4.21, which tells you that he's the fielding independent pitching is a predictive stat of, essentially, if he had a better defense behind him, essentially he would be, playing much, would have a better ERA. And on top of that, I want to point out he pitched 35 more innings this year than he did last year. And last year was a career high. And now this year is the career high. So I think that down the stretch, we saw the last 35 innings is just fatigue at this point. I don't think that Mitch Keller really was ready to take on this load. Handled it, I think, with grace, because obviously the ERA got inflated, but the strikeout numbers were still stellar. I think and another year in this with this kind of workload, I feel Mitch Keller is going to be somebody that will be overlooked, being that he's a Pirate and being that everybody's remembering the end of the season. So keep an eye out on Mitch Keller. Let's see where he's going in drafts, and he might be of value. But let's move on. Let's talk about Johan Oviedo. I think I said that right.
Oviedo.
Oviedo.
You're right there.
Close. So he's somebody that was intriguing for me this year, but kind of like really didn't get the job done. He had a really great start to the season and then kind of like, ping-ponged across production with his production for the rest of the season. 177 innings pitched, 158 strikeouts. He had a 4.31 ERA, and the FIP was 4.49. So you look at it and you go, okay, he pretty much pitched to where he was. And honestly, I think they had a below average defense. So, it's one of those things where even with an average defense, it's worse. That's pretty bad. I look at Oviedo and I go, okay, he's somebody that's going to be ranked in the 70s for me, I think. I haven't done my pitching rankings yet, but somebody that I'm willing to take a shot on to see if he takes a step forward. He's only 25 years old. He's 6'5", 245 pounds. So the body tells me that there's upside from just his frame and just, what he looks like as a person. So he's not written off, but he's not somebody that you're going to go and spend a higher draft pick. It's going to be a late round pick for everybody.
Yeah, Oviedo is somebody you could throw a dart at. Matt mentioned the size, and he gets great extension on his pitches. He has a really good breaking stuff. That's what I like to see, and the velocity is good as well. His fastball isn't as good as his breaking stuff, but the guy sits around 96. I think there's upside for him to tap into. His first half, he pitched to a 4.75 ERA through 18 starts. Second half, he was a 3.72 ERA through 14 starts. He dropped his whip from a 1.41 in the first half to a 1.31 in the second half. I saw improvements. I liked it. As I mentioned, I might even be lower. I did my starting pitcher rankings. I got to around 100. I didn't even throw Oviedo's name in there yet. And I just think dart throw in deep leagues, just kind of just throw your dart that way and see what happens. Let's touch on this last guy. Going to make it real quick. David Bednar, if you play fantasy baseball, you know who this guy is. All-star the last 2 years. He had 39 saves, which led the NL this year, 67 innings, 80 strikeouts. Just a very talented closer. I have David Bednar as my 12th closer, and that's all I really got. All-star closer, David Bednar.
Yeah, solid. I like the ranking. Can't wait to see where I'm going to rank him. Low key could have a lot of save opportunities for next year. So
Oh, yeah.
you see how I talk about the team, and they're probably like one of everybody's least favorite team. I thought this was going to be an ugly, boring episode, but it actually ended up being very insightful for me for my rankings. So yes, David Bednar, somebody else to keep an eye on. But Dom, let's take it home.
Yeah, guys, that's all for today. Please be sure to like, subscribe, comment, rate, and review. Also, thank you for making Locked On Fantasy Baseball your first listen each and every day. And make sure you look out for a new episode tomorrow. Until then, see you.
Peace.